Good day to you. This is Anagalactic bringing you another presentation in cosmic science for over 1,000 lectures now in 4 years. Thank you for tuning in. We are in a rather public area because of a power outage in the building. So this will be one of the last of the videos produced on this cell phone. But for now, I will be talking in a somewhat stentorian voice in order to override the background sounds, which I happen to know are quite concentrated into this microphone. There's not much I can do about that for now, but thank you again for tuning in. We are currently studying the cutting edges of science in all directions, and we've achieved some new boundaries, some new thresholds. That's what science is always doing. We've been doing it since the beginning of science. So what is science for? We've been addressing that. There are several ways to answer that. So all of this is bracketing information for what we're going to attack today, an assault, a real blitzkrieg. We're just going to go for broke. We're going to just defy the limits. We're going to get out there in the cloud, and we're going to get some solutions. We're sick and tired of theories. What have we actually discovered? Well, that turns into a most amazing story. Now, we've been trying to cover that story like good journalists, but we're not journalists, we're scientists. We are a little bit of both, aren't you? We're human. So I've been addressing some pretty doggone deep topics. I mean, we've gone into consciousness. We've gone into reality. We haven't gone into the brain because I don't know much about biology, but we have touched on the construction of the mind. Now, all of these are cutting edge, cutting, bleeding, just suppurating sores just running in every direction where nobody knows anything. Everybody's guessing. Well, is that science? It is at the cutting edge, so let's go further. In the approach to science at the very highest level, no halfway measures. We have to get solutions or it's not science, so we've covered that. So what have we learned and what do we need? The goal of science is undefined, so we addressed that over the past few videos. What are the possibilities for the goal of science? Well, then we discerned that you have to split that into two questions, one of which concerns humanity as a race, and that goes in all directions. So then we focus down to what may be an equivalently important boundary frontier, the individual human mind, soul, body, spirit, whatever you are that's going to terminate or not. What's the answer that you need from science? And that goes over the boundary. It jumps every fence. It goes outside of anything that's going to be normal. So we're going to the axiomatic basis. We're trying to get an origin from which to begin to have an orientation. How do you do that? Well, you could begin with Earth. That's physics. You could begin with the human. That's religion. So we have physics and religion. What's the relationship between those two? I have looked for this answer for 53 years, exactly. 53 and a half. And it's elusive. Nobody has ever even attempted to answer that question. There is no answer. Everyone's given up. Well, we can't, because that's the owie. That's the sore spot. So that's the answer we need for now. Not in religion, in science. But now, we have to include religion somewhere. Westerners can't do it anymore. Now that's statistical. That's a statistical, skeptical, cynical, nasty, underhanded evaluation of you. Do you fall into that category? Well, let's pray not, because we're going to attempt a synthesis that has never been done. Everyone's doing it who knows anything. Everyone's trying who's anybody. I'm now part of that group, right at the cutting edge, way ahead of the pack. And now we need to get solutions that can be proved. Nobody can do that. Let's try. Now, I've been addressing geology. Geology, well, that's not cosmic science. It is now, because in order to get any orientation, which is what we're looking for, to answer that important question, what's the relationship between science and humanity? It's not religion unless you say it that way. We'll see what comes up from that. So we have geology, which is the study of the rock surface of the earth and everything that has to do with that, which is basically the earth. So what do we know about geology? We're going to touch on that. We've gone to the Grand Canyon. We've gone to Antarctica, where I made a discovery. And we've gone to the Himalaya Mountains, where there are fossils 5 miles in the air that nobody knows how they got there. They can't be there, it's impossible. But there they are. Creatures that were formed at the bottom of the deepest ocean, under pressure, now 5 miles up in the air. We've covered geology, from the Colorado Plateau to Antarctica to the Himalaya to Siberia to the Gobi Desert to the Sahara to the Atacama Plateau. We've covered the trenches, we've covered the oceans. We have just pretty much touched on everything. Is that good enough? Not until you get a solution. But first, you have to have knowledge. 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 The storehouse. What Einstein meant to say is, if he's seen farther, it's because he stood on the database, not the shoulders. All right? So you're not standing on my shoulders, I'm not standing on anybody's shoulders, but we sure have a database of knowledge. What have we done with it? Well, according to Proverbs, you want understanding. Everyone knows that. You don't need to read the Bible to know that. That's simply wisdom. So do we have any understanding? We've covered that. What's the goal of understanding? Where is wisdom to be found? Asked Job. The only non-Israeli hero, unless you study the Bible, you may know there are a couple of others. Rahab, for instance. But anyway, wisdom. That question has never been answered. Where is wisdom to be found? Well, some people think they found out how to at least address that question. So that's not science, that's wisdom. Does science lead to wisdom? Not yet. Not by anybody's standard. But some men think so, and they're all white. So, we're dealing with possibly some racist concept. Are the whites really inferior? They don't think so. You might notice that my skin color, whereas it's more or less carmine, would fall into the category of neither black nor brown. So we've covered that. Well, so does Muhammad. Just so you know. Now, after geology, we had to turn back to the real horrendous, just mind-splitting, culture-splitting, war-causing, just nasty, brutal, but intensive, important, critical question: biology. 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 That means the ecology. But now you're talking about, humans. Are you human? Are you sure? All right. So we're talking about humans and the ecology, which is not human, and geology, which is not human. And it turns out everything is inhuman except for humans. So why are humans so important? Well, I'm looking at one in this somewhat of an extended mirror, and the humans are about 8 billion strong. About half of us are alive, the other half are dead. So where does that begin? Now you're going to be in trouble. Where did it begin? Halloween was 2 days ago, forgive me. So I've been checking an article in Wikipedia, which is where we're going to begin today, after a merciful, less than 10-minute introduction. I'm very well known for my extended introductions, but this is because it's inductive, synthetic, solution-oriented science. No more theories. We're done with theories. We need to know what we know and draw conclusions now. Why now? Why now? Because we don't have millions of years. We don't have millions of years to wait. But that's how long we're going to wait before we get any answers out of Western science. Okay, we covered that. Nobody knows anything. Is that true? If it were true, well, we wouldn't be in outer space. Are we in outer space? Who's in outer space? We addressed that. The enemy of mankind is in outer space. Men are not in outer space. Governments are in outer space. Governments are cracking the proton. Governments are splicing genes. Is it good? I think so. Will it kill us? I know so. Is that fair? Depends on if you think this is a game or not. Well, in science, we don't think it's a game. So we have to have an answer, but we don't have a question. So in order to get the question, we have to turn to you. What are you looking for out of science? Well, what are you looking for out of life? If you're a Westerner, that is someone of my basic color, physiognomy, strictly speaking, phenotype, if you're of my phenotype, you haven't got a clue. You'll never get an answer, no matter what your question is. You're just going to live and die like a dog. Is that what you want? I say yes, but is it what you want? No wise man would say yes to that. No, it's not what you want. Well, according to wise men who I have consulted, and we'll be naming a few, including Dr. Malik and a few others, Al-Ghazali, who lived about 1,000 years ago. This is from Dr. Malik's book on Islam and evolution. Islam and evolution. It's the hottest topic on the planet. Why? Because it's a direct confrontation between two completely different orientations to the question, not the answer, but the question. Westerners don't have a question, and we've covered that. An ugly, nasty story. But we're not in this for displeasure. We're in this for pleasure, fun, enlightenment, wisdom. Well, how do we begin? Let's start with this article in Wikipedia, because now we have an objective source. What's the article? Well, if I told you the name of the article, which is pronounced Chicxulub, you might not know how to spell it, you might not know even why you're looking it up. So what are we actually looking up when we look up this article that I've looked up about every few months? I check to see if they've changed it, because it's about the flood, which has been discovered. So there was a flood. That's in Wikipedia. So we're going to begin there. Why? You're going to find out. Why is the flood so controversial if it's been discovered? The time frame. Millions of years. Millions of years, really? Whoever came up with that idea, millions of years, it's 200 years old. So it's only 2 centuries old. Where did it originate? China, India, Australia, Africa? Nope. Those people are not white. They're not European. It's the Europeans who came up with this idea. Contrary to every known form of science, wisdom, rational logic, it's even a bad guess. What is it? Millions of years. For what? 2 things. Geology was first. Lyell and some predecessors around 1800 decided that millions of years was a brand new Walt Disney production. Millions of years. For what? Geology. Is that true? That's the subject of Dr. Malik's book, except it doesn't treat of geology. It treats of eco, biology, ecology, not geology, bio. Why? Humans. That's why. So where do we come from? What's your guess? What's your guess, Westerner? I don't care what skin color you are. That has nothing to do with it. Where are you from? Do you have any idea? I would bet money that you have no idea, because I'm the same skin color as you. That's just a coincidence, is it? Nah, yes or no, I don't care. The point being, you don't know. Does anybody? Pretty much everybody else since the beginning of time has known. It's not millions of years. That is a fight to the death. And that's what's happening. Was it millions of years or not? Well, we're scientists, so whatever we say, we have to prove. That's an incredible restriction. You can't just guess. You can't just say millions of years. You have to prove it. What about the flood? That's been discovered. In my lifetime, it was discovered. That's the article in Wikipedia. Well known. Fully conceded after 40 years of trying to suppress this knowledge. It's out in the open. It's out on the internet. Have you heard of it? I bet money you haven't. Was there a flood? Yes, there was. Who says so? Wikipedia does. And I've checked their sources. It's confirmed, grudgingly, agonizingly. But you know what saves the day for Western millions of years science? You know what saves the day? All right. So that's enough provocative, rhetorical, rather polemical approach. What we want is the truth. Okay, where do you start? Origins. That's our hypothesis. To get the solution to the pressing question, what is the relationship between science and humans, individually or collectively? The collective answer is the most ugly, hideous, nightmarish story you've ever heard, and we've already covered that. So now we want to turn to the good side, the reason we're here, the reason we're communicating. Communication is for good. How much are you picking up from your evolutionists? What kind of good news do they have? Any? What have you gotten out of it? That you're from a what? A hominid? Has that been proved? It's been disproved. It was disproved in my lifetime. Humans do not speciate and they're unspeciated. What does that mean? You have to come up with a new theory of your origin. Darwin, Lyell, Russell, Huxley. There are two Huxleys, so you have to be cautious. Was it millions of years or not? It was not. So, who's saying what? Well, Wikipedia has been allowed graciously by the United States government, which controls information now of this sort. Wikipedia has very grudgingly, very reluctantly, given permission to release the truth discovered by the son of a Nobel Prize laureate in my lifetime, the source of the flood. Now, when you say the flood, hackles fly. Which flood? Oh, the one in Wikipedia. Was that the Bible flood? No. No, that will never be admitted. But is it true? It doesn't matter if it's true. So what we want is the current reigning idea. Where do humans come from? It depends on whom you ask. 15% of the Earth's population is technically white. That's a phenotype, so it's not a race. We're all the same race. As Neil deGrasse Tyson proves, is he white? He's whiter than I am. That's a different use of the word white, isn't it? Well, white is completely unscientific no matter how you look at it. So all it is a phenotypical difference. But who came up with what idea? Within the past 200 years, the Europeans, really the English, came up with the idea, beginning in geology and quickly going to Darwin, who was thrilled, because now he has a fantasy world of millions of years. Well, the geologists were already...
Sorry, I don't want this book anymore, but just overhearing you, I think you would enjoy it.
Well, thank you very much. I wish I could interrupt this, but I can't.
No, keep going, do your thing.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I will tell me a story. Well, I like the title. All right, I was just awarded a book and synchronicity. Well, Carl Jung, you can go to David Bohm. We've covered all that. And the Dalai Lama was good friends with David Bohm, the top-notch quantum mechanist, we've covered all that in hundreds of videos. So we're done with science. Why? We're not done with science, we're beginning science. This is how science begins, with a solution. Now we're at the edge. We've gotten all the data we need. There was a flood, but what does Wikipedia throw in that just changes everything? Hundreds of millions of years. Hundreds of millions of years ago. Is that true? Well, the Grand Canyon says no. The Himalaya Mountains say no. Everything on the surface of the earth that's geological screams no, and now it's been proved. Will that ever be in Wikipedia? I'm willing to take a bet. Wikipedia will never even suggest that the flood was less than millions of years ago. In this case, hundreds of millions. The Paleogene-Cretaceous boundary was discovered by one of my heroes, Dr. Walter Alvarez, the son of a Nobel Prize winner in physics, Luis Alvarez, legendary. His son and his father, with some help, discovered an iridium boundary layer in the sedimentary rock. And now it's been discovered all over the world, and now it's confirmed, and that's in Wikipedia. That was unknown when I was in high school. So there was a flood. Grudgingly. That man was in danger of assassination, in my opinion, because that goes completely contrary to you-know-what, which is racist. So the whites are winning, and they're not going to quit. They've got the handle on origins, and that's the end of religion. Not here, it's not. What does the rest of the world think? It turns out that the rest of the world has had the right answer all along. What's the rest of the world? Depends on your time frame. We've covered that. So Dr. Malik has written a book that I've quoted from, and it's my most popular video. I've got email from all over the world from Islam people that I can't even tell you. It's very heartwarming to someone who doesn't get much attention from the people I'm trying to reach, but now I'm trying to reach those people that actually could benefit from hearing this, the ones who already know our origins. And I've proved that they're right. Your scientists say that you have a certain origin, and they will never let go of that. Millions of years. Whoa! Just like Walt Disney. So you can do anything with millions of years. No. In my lifetime, the DNA code was cracked, and that's the end of evolution. Except for what I discovered in the ancient texts. There was a form of speciation shortly after the flood. So what it is the rest of the world, since the beginning of time, literally, what do they say about the origin of humans? 10,000 years ago. As of now, it was 10,000 years ago. That's an order of time. There's actually 8,000. So was Archbishop Usher right? He was a lot closer than your scientists. Your scientists? My scientists? Who are these scientists? They're paid. All of them are white, and they're all paid by the United States government. Millions of years it was taught in our schools. When I was growing up, it was such an enormous controversy whether to even allow evolution to be taught in schools. And now you know the tables have turned. Now you're not allowed to know the truth. You're only allowed to know what these liars say, and they've all been disproved. If you want to read a very good book about that, about Darwin, personally about Darwin, by one of the greatest American journalists of all time, Tom Wolfe, The Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test, The Right Stuff. His last book, a prolific author, and I've read every one of his books. Maybe I left out 3, but he's written a couple of dozen. Tom Wolfe wrote The Kingdom of Speech, which really throws some mud in the face of Noam Chomsky, but actually he's complimenting Noam because Noam was a master of linguistics. Very revered. He was against the Vietnam War. He's a good man in his way. But he was in favor of evolution, of course, because you're not allowed to be a scientist unless you're in favor of evolution, which means what? Millions of years. Which means you can come up with any goddamn fantasy you want. No, you can't. Not in science you can't. Is there a mechanism of change? It's been proved now there's none. Well, you'd never know it, would you? So what's the truth? Well, you have to have some scientific evidence. How about the Grand Canyon? We went there. That's really hard to make millions of years out of that. And then it turns out there's no evidence for millions of years, because nothing goes back before 10,000 years. Can you accredit that? Is that a truthful statement? I would have to prove it. Well, I can only tell you that tens of thousands of actual Americans, I know what I said, but it's a strange world we live in, is only this year that I discovered, oh my God, I'm not alone. Those goddamn creation scientists are still around and they're going strong. And now they have everything, but they fight among themselves because, of course, there's infiltrators. How do I know that? Pure guess. So where do we begin? I've been checking that article in Wikipedia, C-H-I-C-X-U-L-U-B, Chicxulub. Why is the flood listed under Chicxulub? Because that's the discovery that was made that proved the flood. What was it? A comet strike. That's what the Wikipedia article is about. A 1 million SAR bomb, that's 100 million megatons, struck the Earth 10,000 years ago. But Wikipedia is not allowed to say that. No, it was 600 million years ago. No, it wasn't. So now we're going to talk about that, because that brings in religion the right way. Because there's this fantastic story that's been around on Earth, and the Islam people know about it. They're now the custodians of it, since the Israelis no longer exist. There are no Israelis. Did you know that? We covered that. There actually are some Yehudi left in Ethiopia. Did you know that? You're not allowed to know that in America. The rest of the world knows it. You don't. Isn't that funny? What else don't you know that's been discovered in my lifetime? I'm 70 years old. So we know there was a flood, and we know that it was 10,000 years ago. Wikipedia admits the former, but cannot admit the latter. What's the evidence for the latter? How do we know it was 10,000 years ago? We covered that. Now it's time to put the pieces together. Science has proved that the Bible flood occurred. So how come the ancients were so smart to know that there had been a flood? There are a lot of stories around the world of floods, but that would not count, because the flood is described in Wikipedia killed 100% of life on Earth. Wikipedia is forced to dumb that down to 75%. Still, that puts a big dent in evolution. It has to start over. Well, it has to start over one way or another. That's why speciation is such an interesting issue. I found direct evidence from one of the lost books of the Bible. I know it sounds strange, but this goes into the espionage, the crazy side. It's called the Book of Enoch, and it belongs in Genesis, and I'm the world's foremost expert on that book. That was the first part of my life. You only live twice, my friend. So the second part of my life, going on for 16 years now, has been an astronomer. But I got into spherical geometry, discovered a new geometry, then the number system. It unlocks all the Einstein field and energy equations and solves the quantum paradox at both ends. So that's quite a discovery. So that's why I started publishing. But it's led in every direction. I've now made about 100 major discoveries in every field of science, all of them earth-shaking, all of them changing your life for the better. All you've been getting is bad news, because theories are bad news. If you have a theory, you failed. You have a theory, then you failed. You have to know. What do we have? Our origins, for Pete's sake. Where are you from? Where are humans from? Well, you know the story. And there's quite an old joke now, and it's become tedious to those who defend their own lies. Oh yeah, we're all from monkeys. Well, hominids, what do you say? No matter how you slice and dice it, after the discovery of DNA, which Darwin and Russell did not know about, they didn't know the mechanism, and Darwin is quoted in his book. He only said it once, my theory is shit. He said that. Word for word, except shit. No, he didn't say shit. He said absurd in the highest degree. Why? He gave an example, but he said there's an infinite number of examples. The human eyeball. Just to take a random, impossible. There is no mechanism. That's what he said. It's in his book that he authorized. It's not an interpolation. Nobody threw that in. Oh, Darwin said it's absurd in the highest degree. He certainly did. But he's simply reporting as a good scientist what he found out. The blasted finches on the Galapagos Islands speciated. Yes, they did. What caused it? I found that out from the ancient book of Enoch. Isn't that funny? That's someone who lived before the flood, and his grandson was Noah. So who outlived the flood? Well, Bill Cosby tells a heartwarming story that we used to listen to as children about Noah talking back to God. Boy, did we laugh. Well, he turned out to be something that got him locked up for 3 years in Pennsylvania, but then they let him go because it's made up, and you can check. Totally illegal proceeding. But America is pretty sensitive about that issue. So a good fall guy. Bill Cosby, well, when you got 40, you know who brought the suit? I can't say it. I can't say what she was. But she holds it against him to this day. He thought that he was raping me, but she's still out there. Nobody's stopping her. So what a monkey trial, right? So that's our milieu. Just rampant lies, just total coercion. You're not allowed to have choices. Well, that's already not science. But in our lifetime, that is my lifetime, which I'm sharing with you, we discovered the flood, and we discovered that DNA is a locked code and cannot speciate. And humans have nothing to do with it. When Darwin published his first book, he only mentioned humans. Maybe it has something to do with humans. But then Russell published it. Oh, of course it has something to do with humans. And so Darwin published again. And again, read Tom Wolfe's book. Gives you the whole story. You're an ignorant American if you don't read Tom Wolfe's book. I am a scientist. I'm telling you what your homework is. You'll love it. The man is a gifted writer, okay? Anyway, we studied geology. We studied biology. We touched on Islam. I've been reading from Dr. Malik's book, and he is an Islam scholar. What he's trying to do is make peace between Western evolution lies and Islam truth. And he's very reticent to put it that way because he doesn't want to restart the bitter argument, which will result in millions, if not billions, of deaths. So who's right, Islam or London? Well, you would think the Christians might have something to say about that since they inherited the transmission. Whom did they inherit it from? The ones who no longer exist. So religions do change, they morph. So then who picked up the transmission? The Arabians did. They're sons of Abraham. So why is Abraham so important in 3 religions, 2 of which still exist and one is totally corrupt and the other one has the transmission? Christianity is fake. I'm not saying that the gospel is fake. I'm Islam. We believe in the gospel. But we don't believe in Christianity. Not English or American. So they have the transmission. They fully accept the story of the flood, as any scientist must now, because it's true. So that's been proved, and humans are not part of the speciation process. What about those finches? After the flood, there was, of course, if you credit this at all, and this is, very difficult for a Western person to credit at all. It's just made up shit, of course, you know that. Well, you've been brainwashed to think that. You have no choice. Well, that's not science, darling. You have to consider all sides because science has come up not even with a blank. It's not even a theory. There is no theory of evolution, neither for geology nor for biology. But was there speciation? That can be proved. So what happened after the flood? It's not in the Bible. Should it have been in the Bible? Only a few top-notch experts could even address that question. It just so happens I'm at the top, so I'll tell you the answer. The Book of Enoch was excised by the, I'll just say, certain nation. And That can be shown, although not proved. So this is going out on a limb. I hope you're ready for a ride. Remember what Hunter S. Thompson said, the man who blew his brains out? You pay the ticket, pay for the ticket, take the ride. Take the ride before it's too late. Just consider. This is not fancy. This is a science hall. The flood has been proved and it's been dated, and geology absolutely confirms it. There is no question about that. But what about speciation? Humans did not, that's been proved. But did those finches? They had to. What did it? It's in the book of Enoch. So what's the history of this strange book? Who's Enoch? Have you ever heard of him? He lived before the flood, that's known. But was that just made up later, and that's how we know it? No. You know how we know that? Abraham. He's the earliest man, unless you trust the Bible, which then would be the only source. But cross-confirmational, genealogical, straight back through the human line from generation to generation going back. It's purely mathematical. It's actually binary. There had to be two original humans even for evolution. There had to be two because there had to be a female and a male. That's called sexual reproduction. And I've given lectures on that, which have some pretty interesting historical notes to it. So humans are out. They were created, that's known, at least to the Islam and Christian people. And that's synonymous, just so you know. There are currently some differences because Islam came in contact with Christianity in its European form. And I think we all know what that is. Catholicism, at least until Luther, absolutely right. Anti-Christianity, in the name of Christ. Well, there are names for that in certain books. But this is the first book ever written. And the Islam people taught me that because they know who Enoch is. You don't, I don't, we're not allowed to. I do now, but only because, well, a scientist does research. So, Enoch was a real human being. How do we know that? Because the transmission that came into the possession of Abraham, of course, was transferred to Israel, whose name was changed from Jacob, who was the grandson of Abraham. And Abraham also had a son named Ishmael, who is the father of the Arabian people, from whom comes Muhammad. Peace be upon him always. And that's the only time you have to say that. Just say, peace be upon him always, and then forget saying that anymore because it's tedious. Although to hear an Arabian say it, I can't hear it enough because it's just mellifluous. Arabian is a magic language. It's a mathematical language. And the Islam scholars are aware of that. That's why, even as it was in Hebrew, there's a certain inflection that cannot be translated. And Arabian, of course, is a Semitic language, so it's related to Hebrew. Which is somewhat misnamed because Heber was actually in the lineage of Abraham. We're just basically talking about the Shemitic tongues. So there was a major division at that time. Well, that's a major clue for orientation into history, which is a notoriously dicey subject. But we can definitely date Abraham accurately. There's no question about that. Before that, there's only one record. If you only have one record, there's always de facto, or you could say ex nihilo logic. You just make something up in order to have something to tell your kids and then pretend it's true. That's the story of most myths. It could be true, but you gotta say something to the kids or they don't know anything. So you have to make up something. These are called myths, legends, whatever. Now, was this a myth? From the Western point of view, of course, but was it a myth? No. No, the transmission records that came into the hands of the Israelis, which they preserved and now form about 40 books of the received texts in English. 20-so books are the New Covenant or New Testament, which were written after the time of Yeshua. But the book, the Tanakh, was collected. It's actually 40 books. And it's divided into three main groups, but these are separate books that cover literally thousands of years. How many? About 4,000 years. That's a long time. Can we trace back? How far can we trace back human history? Depends on whom you believe. We have the English latecomers who say millions of years. But what's reality? What has science actually discovered? Well, in history, you don't really have a laboratory except for whatever. What if nobody said anything? And it's 200 years ago, well, we just invented writing and now we're going to write something down. Were there oral transmissions? Well, probably. It certainly has occurred in every single tribe, nation. Anyone who's ever been anywhere has made up something about the cosmos, about the origin of humans, the origin of this, that, the plants, clouds, whatever. Things up in the sky, what's that all about? Well, we're still doing that, aren't we? Well, what have we learned? Well, what we learned is the ancients knew some stuff that they passed along. Can we confirm any of it? We certainly can. The flood. It wasn't a local flood. By the way, if you read Dr. Walter Brown's book, who just died about 10 days ago, I just found this out. One of my teachers, one of my heroes, Dr. Walter Brown, who has definitely shown us how the Grand Canyon was formed. And his book, I don't know, I just think this book is amazing. And a great man just passed off the scene. But there are a few tens of thousands of top-notch, many of them PhDs, are absolutely certain of what I'm certain too. So is Islam, so is a true Christian. There was a flood. It was not millions of years ago. So what does that mean for speciation? It means that after that flood, there was speciation. Why not humans? All we can say in science is that it doesn't affect humans. And I've given the proof, so I hope you're at least willing to go view those videos. It's very easy to prove that humans are neither speciated, nor do we speciate. Instead, we phenotypify. That's why we have different phenotypical profiles, including skin color, of which there are 4. And only 4. All the blacks are south of the equator. That's a very rough, but it's essentially true. All the whites are well north of the equator, and all the brown people are just north of the equator. The Chinese are on the other side of the Himalaya mountains. They were separated early. What do they know about their origins? Nothing. Do they have any holy books? Yes, and Muhammad pointed that out. The I Ching is holy. They don't talk about God. It just seems as though they take it for granted. It's never mentioned God anywhere. So that's fine, because wisdom, you don't have to be talking about God, you're just talking about facts. Well, the I Ching is a very ennobling book. It has to do with David Bohm's implicate order, and we've covered that. So all of this is to be fused together now so we can get the answer to our question, what is science for? I will answer that for you now. Except it's 4 p.m., so we'll have to continue this in a second video. Thank you for tuning in. The video that was just produced was released from August 11th of this year. It was called Islam and Evolution, which is the title of Dr. Malik's book, which I strongly recommend. He's very even-handed. He's closer to appreciating evolution, whatever it has to offer, because he's a peacemaker. And both Muhammad and Yeshua insist that being a peacemaker is what you want to be if you don't compromise the truth. Well, in this case, I'm afraid, Dr. Malik is my hero, and he's teaching me to be patient and to accept and to follow what Muhammad said, which is you'll never convince them, you're not their teacher, they've already made their choice, nothing will ever change them. But he also said, and here's the quote that I wanted to give you, and then I have to go because this place is closing. Ah, yes. This is from the Hadith. The Hadith is tradition, which means this is what Muhammad said, but he didn't write it in the Quran. And they treat this as dicey as you might think it's dicey. They argue about what he really said all the time because they really think that that guy, whatever he said, is like, you know what? I haven't found any exceptions to it. No, he's perfect. He was a prophet. Only a prophet can be certain of another one. Well, that's an extended definition. I mean, take a look at me. Do I look like a prophet? Nah. But a guide? Perhaps. So here's the quote from the Hadith. What was reported, and there's actually a chain where, you know, Umar said, and then even someone else said that he heard, and several people heard him say this. So take it for what it's worth. I think it's worth a lot. So to the Islam people, of whom I am now one, the ink of the scholar is more sacred than the blood of the martyr. I leave that for you to ruminate about. And speaking of Rumi, we'll be back with Rumi, the beginner of the mystic side of Islam. And of course, I recognize Rumi, the greatest poet of all time, a spiritual imam in my opinion, and I have right to my opinion. Thank you for tuning in. This is Anagalactic, bringing you the secrets of the universe now for 4 years, beginning with geometry, going to the edge of the universe, then the conjugal solution to physics. Collapse of the wave function is solved. It will never be accepted because it's more important to the government to keep the games going, while Israel is busy doing its work. And have a happy nightmare if you choose. You don't have to. You can ignore it. That's what Yeshua said to do. That's what Muhammad said to do. I'm still learning. Thank you. We'll be right back.